Hello everyone, today we're going to be hooking up this dual bowl kitchen sink. This may look a little confusing at first, but in this video I'm going to try to make it as easy and simple as possible. And with some basic hand tools and the right parts, so you don't have to go back to the hardware store multiple times, you can get this done in no time. To start, let's check that the drain assembly is properly installed. We'll cover more of that later in the video. If you have an existing drain assembly, make sure there are no signs of leak and that the threads aren't damaged. Make sure it's also cleaned and ready for use. In my case, I use a wire brush to remove all the gunk from the threads. And to put all of this together, you basically need one part. The part I recommend is a drain kit from Plumcraft. What I like about this kit is that it has all the parts and extras. The kit you find at the hardware stores may not have everything you need, so you're gonna end up finding yourself back at the hardware store getting additional parts. And if you're interested on either of these parts, check the description. I'm gonna leave a link to where you can get either one of them. And if you're watching this on your TV, like many of us, I'm gonna leave a QR code for you right here that also will take you to the parts we're gonna use today. The first component I'm going to install is the dishwasher tailpiece. This has a small end pointed upwards, and it's where you connect the dishwasher hose. When installing this, make sure to point the dishwasher tailpiece towards the back. This way, you keep the dishwasher hose tucked on the back of the cabinet. Next, we're going to slide a nut under the straight flange tailpiece and connect that onto the drain assembly. And for now, don't worry about tying this all the way down just yet. And we'll take a waist arm and an end outlet T and place that against the tail pieces. Then we'll mark where we need to cut the tail piece. Make sure that one of the bowls will have at least a 1/4 inch slope per foot, dumping the waist onto the other side. There are a few different ways to cut a tailpiece. I really like these mini hacksaws. They work really well in tight areas. If you do not have one of these mini hacksaws, you can remove the tailpiece, then cut it, and then assemble it back. To install the tailpiece onto the assembly drain, I always use some kind of threaded sealant. For this project, I'm using Gazzola threaded sealant. Apply a generous amount around the threads and tighten the tailpiece onto the assembly by hand. You repeat the same process for the other side. After applying the threaded sealant, slide the nut onto the tailpiece and tighten it down onto the assembly drain. In the kit, you're gonna find a handful of slip nut and washers. On the next few steps, you're gonna need the 1.5 inch poly washers. These are the bigger ones in the package, so you make sure to set those aside. Take a pair of slip nut and poly washers and make sure that the poly washer faces the right direction. You want the flat surface of the poly washer to sit inside the slip nut. You then slide the slip nut and the poly washers onto the tailpiece, and you do the same on the other side. Take the waist arm and insert onto the tailpiece. Then push down the poly washer into the waist arm. You want to make sure it's fully seated before you tie down the slip nut. Slide a slip nut and a poly washer on the other side of the waist arm. Then take the end outlet T and insert that onto the waist arm. And just like before, tighten down the slip nut onto the end outlet T, making sure that the poly washer is fully seated. Now take the outlet T, insert that onto the tailpiece, push down the poly washer, and tighten down the slip nut like we've been doing. To continue, we need another slip nut and poly washer, and we need a J band. One side of the J band is taller than the other side. This side goes over the end outlet T. Insert the J band all the way onto the outlet. Then we have a wall tube. The wall tube needs only a slip nut. You do not need a poly washer here. That's because the end of a wall tube is beveled and that acts as a washer. Now to connect the drain line to the wall drain, I need more fittings. This last connection will vary for everybody and it depends on their plumbing layout. I take a female adapter, a 45-degree elbow, a small piece of 1.5" PVC, and a female connector. I use Oatly purple primer and cement to glue all of this together. I apply a little more Gasoil threaded sealant onto the threads and tighten down the fitting I just made. And now I remove the wall tube from the J-band and I insert the last slip nut and poly washer. I insert the wall tube back onto the wall drain and I line up the J-band with the wall tube. Keep in mind that this is the most critical connection of the whole drain. The wall tube needs to sit perfectly onto the J-band, then you tighten down the slip nut. Then what you have left here is tightening down the slip nut onto the wall tube and also the one onto the J-band. At this point, I also recommend you go back and check all the slip nuts. Make sure they are hand tight. Do not use channel locks or any other tool to over tighten these nuts. And now you're ready to install your dishwasher. Just remember, if you're not putting a dishwasher at this point, to plug this so no water will come out in case of a clogged P-trap. There's various ways to do this. I really like doing the end outlet T method. The other one is a center outlet T. I'm not a big fan of this method. That's because on the event that both sinks are being drained at the same time, they'll get to a point where they're gonna fight to get the water through the drain. Also, this keeps the J-band and the P-trap on the side of the cabinet, allowing more space for storage. And after doing all of this, you find out you have a leaky assembly drain. I recommend you checking out this video right here. I'll walk you through the top reasons why assembly drain will leak and how to fix them. I hope you learned something in this video and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.